Welcome everybody back to another fantastic episode of the Three-Man Rush podcast. And it's going to be a little different video or podcast if you are listening, because we got a few things to talk about, such as Matt freaking Ryan, Matty Ice getting traded to the Indianapolis Colts. I'm sure you guys were waiting to hear my reaction to this. It's going to be a good reaction. If you can't tell, I'm a little hyped up. But if you're new, thanks for joining us. We are on YouTube. We are on Spotify. We are on Amazon. Anywhere you can get podcasts, we are there. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the little bell notification. That way you're notified every time we release a new video. We're going to be releasing quite a few videos this week because there's a lot that's going down. Stuff that has happened, and we haven't even really been able to get into stuff that we had planned because of all the news. But that being said, thank you guys for the support. And today's episode is just pure blockbuster moves. Every time you turn around, a quarterback's on the move, a wide receiver's on the move, a pass rusher is getting traded. There's just all kinds of stuff going on. And this has been, I don't want to necessarily say, it's been revisionist history. I can't think of another NFL offseason that's been as wild as the last 2 to 3 weeks have been. This has just been crazy. It's every day. Carson Wentz is going somewhere. Matt Ryan's going somewhere. Deshaun Watson's going somewhere. Russell freaking Wilson is going somewhere. Aaron Rodgers is he going to retire? Is he not going to retire? Tom Brady, is he going to retire? Is he not going to retire? Amari Cooper, going
Davante
to the
Adams.
Davante, yeah, dude, I didn't even think about Davante Adams. It's just been constant.
Mack,
Khalil, yeah.
Dude.
Yannick Ngakoue.
It's nuts, man.
Yeah, dude, this has been a wild, at least 6 days. So without further ado, welcome to the show. We are so excited to be here. There are only 2 of us. Normally there's 3 of us. Jared, when he got the news that Matt Ryan was a Colt, he kind of wet himself and flooded his basement. So he's not gonna be with us. He got too excited, but he will be on the other ones this week. Hopefully we'll be able to get him on. So right now it's just me and Drew holding it down, which, anytime it's just me and you, the views are definitely going to go down because Jared's not here.
Jared definitely carries us in that category. Yeah.
He's better to look at.
Channel's going to take a hit this week.
Yeah. But hey, who knows? There's all kinds of stuff to talk about. So without further ado, like I said, let's get into it. First move, we saw, which I think we've kind of talked about it, but the Carson Wentz thing was done. And then Aaron Rodgers is going back to Green Bay, and then Tom Brady unretired, which we talked about our last video. So what exactly has happened since then, Drew?
Well, you know what? I'm not going to make anybody that's listening to this wanting your reaction to wait. We're just going to jump right into it. This wasn't the first thing that happened, after the Brady news or anything like that. It's actually the most recent one. But let's talk about Matt Ryan getting traded to the Indianapolis Colts for a 2022 third-round pick. Well, let's talk about that. So I'm going to let you just get right into it. I'm going to sit back.
Look, Chris Ballard is a G. That guy is a wizard because he is somehow, if you think about the Wentz trade, that didn't work out. They lost the first-round pick. They traded their third-round pick last year. And he's going into this, they move Carson Wentz to Washington, and it's looking, like, well, shit, who's out there? Russell Wilson wants to go to Denver. Aaron Rodgers is going back. What do we do? Jimmy Garoppolo, Marcus Mariota, Baker Mayfield. And you're looking at all this, and then all of a sudden a little name pops up on my timeline the other day I believe it was about 4 days ago. I got a little text message, and it said, it was just a picture of an ice cube. That's all it was. Just a picture of an ice cube. I texted back. I said, is this what I think it is? And the guy said, maybe. So then I kind of I was like, okay. So I look at the ice cube, and then you see the Deshaun Watson rumors about him going to Atlanta. And I was thinking, it's like, oh shit, Matt Ryan. Like, who would have thought Matt Ryan would be available? You're talking about 14 years, franchise quarterback, MVP. One of top 10 in passing touchdowns and passing yards in history. So I mean, like guys like that don't really come available. And I know, yeah, he's 36. Look, we just had a 34-year-old quarterback win Super Bowl. We just had a 39-year-old quarterback win the most valuable player. We just had a 44-year-old quarterback be runner up to the MVP and have arguably his best season yet.
And win the Super
Matt
Bowl with
Ryan's,
his new team in his
yeah,
first year with the
exactly.
team, a
Yeah.
couple years ago.
Yeah. So I mean, all these guys, you're talking, yeah, he's a little older. He's a little older.
Old
I
is the
mean,
new
look,
old is the new young in the
yeah,
NFL.
exactly. I prefer the term experienced.
Yes.
So
Well seasoned.
so as sent you guys a few messages, whenever I heard some stuff, I was like, it's like, I think there's something going on. I think there's something to this. Sent it 4 days ago. I said, just wait. And lo and behold, here we are today. And like I said, Chris Ballard is a freaking wizard because he has turned Carson Wentz into Matt Ryan, a second round. They moved up in the second round, so a better second round pick.
Moved up 5 spots, right?
Yep. A better third round pick. They went. So they traded the way like I guess you kind of look at it. So the Colts traded a single third round pick for Matt Ryan. A lot of that had to do because Matt Ryan wanted to be in Indianapolis. That was where he wanted to go.
Right.
He didn't, from what I understand, he did not have a no trade clause. There's been some conflicting reports on that, but
oh yeah, because I thought I saw one that he did.
Yeah. So see, yeah, I mean, it's yes or no. I mean, but regardless, he wanted to be in
Atlanta
Indy.
did right by him, though.
Exactly, because they did so wrong by him over the last
right.
week.
Yeah.
So I think this was their last chance to salvage that relationship, not only with Matt Ryan, but with their fan base as well, because that fan base right now is hot.
Don't blame them.
Yeah, so they traded him for a single third round pick. So the way you look at it, Chris Ballard flipped a third round pick third round pick and Carson Wentz, and he turned that into Matt Ryan, a better second round pick, a better third round pick, because the Colts gave their original third rounder, which was 82nd overall. They kept the one they got from Washington, which was 73.
Yeah, 9 spots.
So they didn't even give
right.
they didn't even give Atlanta their good third round pick. It was their worst one.
Right.
And a third round pick next year that could turn into a second round pick. And I'll say there's more. Matt Ryan's cap is only 23.8 million. Wentz's is 28 million. So they upgraded at quarterback, got better draft value, possibly another second rounder, next year, and saved $5 million on the cap. What a masterclass. Like, that's just unreal. I kind of liken it to the tortoise and the hare story where, everybody's, right off the gate, just like, oh, Colts need to do something. Nobody, you turn on, NFL Today or, Good Morning Football and stuff, and they're all talking. They're just like, what are the Colts doing? They have $70 million. They haven't made any moves. I don't know what their plan is. And then here comes old tortoise Chris Ballard coming up and just wiping the floor with the competition. This is just unbelievable. And so now Atlanta has to eat a $40.5 million dead cap hit this year. After
and they still save money.
They saved about $8 million bucks. But so they eat that, which is the largest dead cap hit in history, which was $7 million more than, guess who? The Philadelphia Eagles, who ate Carson Wentz's dead cap hit last year after he was traded to the Colts. So if I'm an NFL GM and Chris Ballard phone calls me, I'm not answering because I'm having to eat something. Well, I don't want no part of it.
The Falcons probably aren't too happy about it. I don't think the Eagles' feelings are all that hurt about the draft compensation they got for eating, for eating that cap. But the Matt Ryan one is definitely that's tough. Although it might be an unpopular opinion. I like what the Falcons are doing draft wise. I don't like you don't ever trade away Matt Ryan and win the trade. It's just it's just not a thing. But the direction that franchise was heading, the roster overall, and things like that, the cap hit is going to hurt them for a little bit. But they got some decent draft capital.
Well, it's only going to hurt them for 1 year because next year I believe they are projected to have around $101 million in cap space. So
and Matt Ryan's kind of one of those guys where it's like you're he's too good for you to completely tank. Like they might have, they would probably have been in like the top 6, 7 picks like they've been the past couple of years, but you're not going to be, you know,
You're not going to get
top
the top two.
top 2 picks, something like that.
CJ
Where
Stroud, Bryce Young, that
right,
kind of
which is
stuff.
where they
Yeah.
could firmly be setting next year now that they don't have
Probably
Matt Ryan.
that might be the worst roster in the NFL,
Them
which
and the Texans, yeah.
which goes hand in hand of why like that team had no business winning 7 games last year.
Right.
That team won 2 games less than the Colts did. The Colts had 7 Pro Bowlers. The Falcons had Zacharias and Russell Gage
And Kyle
and
Pitts.
which Kyle Pitts didn't really come on till towards the end of the year. He didn't really start out. I mean, he's a rookie tight end. You know, he
There's
he
always
didn't really
learning
start
curve
out
there.
hot.
He had the big London game against the Jets in the middle of the season.
He kind of kicked it on towards the end of the year, but I mean, his best running back was a wide receiver.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's
just,
true.
You know, and a journeyman wide receiver at that, you know, so one of the worst offensive lines in the last 3 years, which coincidentally kind of coincides with his stats decreasing. But
yeah,
as always, we don't scout the box sheet, we scout the film. And I went back last night, you know, I was doing some stuff and I went back because I kind of had an inkling with the deal having to be done today with his bonus money. It had to be done today by 4 p.m. Eastern. Kind of a little feeling that, you know, if something's going to get done, it's going to get done today. And started rewatching some Matt Ryan stuff. So I'll say this. The myth of his demise has been greatly exaggerated because what I saw on film did not match up with what we saw on the stat sheet. Very similar to Carson Wentz, only the opposite way, where what you saw in the stat sheet with him, you know, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, you know, the 90 QBR, like all that kind of stuff. It didn't match what he put on film. So This is almost the exact opposite of this scenario where I felt, you know, I got through a couple games last night and I felt so sorry for Matt Ryan because that dude got destroyed on a weekly basis. He was just getting murdered. I believe he had the fastest time to throw in the NFL. So what that is, if you're not familiar with that, is how quick does the quarterback get the ball out after the ball is snapped? So he was the fastest in the NFL at it last year at getting the ball.
And if you play in the same league as Tom Brady and you lead in that stat, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So
Tom typically handles that.
So here was a jarring thing. So not only did he lead the league in that, he led the league in total pressures as well.
Yeah.
Which that is almost directly the opposite of what happens generally. Generally, if you're getting the ball out that quick, you don't really face a lot of pressures because the ball's gone.
Right.
If that wasn't the case with Matt Ryan, he was getting the ball out quick and he was still getting killed. I believe he's the most hit quarterback in the NFL over the last 3 seasons. And at his age, you know, that could be concerning. Where I'm not concerned is the fact that he has missed 1 game that he didn't even really have to miss. It wasn't really an important game, so he set out. 1 game since 2010. The last 12 years, he's missed 1 game. In his entire career, he's only missed 3 games. So you want to talk about the definition of durability? That's Matt Ryan. He's available. He's there. He's not hurt that often. And then some of the throws I made, everyone wants to talk about the arm strength. You know, like when you know, generally whenever you're older, there's 2 things that go, and that's your legs and that's your arm. Right. You know, Colts fans should be really familiar with that due to Phillip Rivers, all that kind of stuff. That's not the case with Matt Ryan. That guy still has terrific short area velocity. I'm talking about, you know, 20, you know, inside 20 yards, 20 and under. That guy has incredible velocity. He's able, I mean, there were tons and tons and tons of tight window throws I saw where he's fitting the ball in to really tight windows. And then he still has the ability to, you know, drop it in 40, you know, 55, 60 yards down the field. He was never a guy, you know, even whenever he was coming out of Boston College, which I loved him coming out of Boston College, but he was never a guy that had the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, 70, 80-yard cork it arm. I mean, he was never that guy. But I don't think his arm's diminished at all. And a lot of that has to do with just how smart he is and how mechanically sound he is. I mean, whenever you want to teach a quarterback mechanics, Matt Ryan is teach tape. Like that's the type of guy you're getting, which is the exact opposite of what they had last year with their quarterback.
Yeah, Jim Irsay basically said, I want you to go out and get me the exact opposite of Carson Wentz. And then Matt Ryan appeared.
Exactly. That's literally, which I mean, a lot of people crapped on him for being short-sighted and, like, oh, Wentz, we should have gave Wentz one more year and all that stuff. And, they're probably not thinking that.
The sign of a good GM is realizing you got it wrong and cutting bait and just trying to move on and right your wrongs. Like I don't think there's any value in sticking to a bad move just for the sake of sticking to it to hope that it turns things around.
Prove yourself right.
Yeah. Like, if you're a smart guy like Chris Ballard is, your eyes aren't lying to you. You know what you're seeing out there on the field isn't what you thought you would be getting. Cut bait, move on, and try to find another solution. So I commend them for that. I think that was great that they did that and they didn't just wait around. To your point with in terms of pressures, if you put it into a percentage, he was pressured 40% of his dropbacks, which was second most in the NFL last year. And say what you want about PFF, but the discrepancy in these grades is I don't care how good or bad you think their PFF grades are. The fact that his grade was 40 points higher whenever he was thrown from a clean pocket versus under pressure lets you know the difference in the level of quarterback play that you'll get playing behind Indy's line versus playing behind Atlanta's line last year.
Yeah. And everybody wants to talk about the upgrade from Carson Wentz to Matt Ryan. The biggest upgrade in this whole scenario is
left
Matt
guard.
Ryan. Yeah, is Matt Ryan going from his left guard down there, which, he's still a young left guard. I mean, he's, we'll see if that turns around for him. But it was Jalen Mayfield was his left guard. Is going from Jalen Mayfield to Quentin Nelson. That's the biggest upgrade in this whole scenario. So yeah, I mean, there were so many moves that we need to touch on that I don't want to spend, even though I very easily could spend the whole podcast on this. So I'll just go ahead and say, just ask the question to you because you are a outside party looking into this, where obviously I'm going to have some bias on the move. So what do you think of the move in terms of now where this moves the Colts in their division and how they stack up, compared to some of the other rosters in the AFC? Because as we've seen, the AFC's just been loading up all offseason. This was another one of those moves. And let's not forget also, which is something, I mean, we won't really talk on too much, but the Colts also went out and traded Rocky Ya-Sin, cornerback, for Yannick Ngakoue, who is right up there, actually has more pressures than Aaron Donald, even though Aaron Donald is second. And that guy's a freak because it's a defensive tackle and not a defensive end. So I'm not comparing them, but I'm just saying.
Just to give you an idea of how good Ngakoue's been at getting to the quarterback, though.
Yeah, he is the only guy since 2016, which was the year he was drafted, that, I think him and Aaron Donald are the only two guys that have 8 or more sacks every single season. And he's only 26 years old also.
Yeah, it's so weird to me that he's bounced around as much as he has already at this early in his career.
Yeah,
it doesn't that just doesn't make sense to me. But I think he's found a good home here, though.
I don't think he's going anywhere for at least a few years.
Assuming Kwity Paye takes that next level of development, and then you've obviously got DeForest Buckner up there in the middle. The defensive line went from a question mark to a strength, after that.
Not only that, but they also have, their second round pick last year that was coming off the Achilles tear, which is why he slipped into the second round, which is Dayo Odengbo. And he showed some real flashes last year as well. And also Grover Stewart on that defensive line, who is one of the most underrated defensive linemen in all of football. Just absolutely fantastic. So yeah, their defensive line is looking tough right now.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see how it plays out. But to get back to the Matt Ryan thing, from an outside party looking in, where do you think, like I said, where do you think this places the Colts now in their division? And where do you see this placing them in the conference? Like, or do you see them just, if they get into the playoffs, can you see them making a run?
So in terms of where it puts him in the division and just kind of how I feel in general, if you guys listened to the last podcast we did, we actually touched on this toward the end, because the Matt Ryan whispers kind of started toward the end of the show whenever we were recording it live. And as soon as you said it, I kind of lit up like, oh, if Matt Ryan goes to the Colts, that they should be considered the favorites to win the division. And my feelings have not wavered on that at all, with the move actually happening now. I do. Prior to this move, I would have picked the Titans to win the division. And now if I pick today, I would be picking the Colts to win the division. I think they should be the AFC South favorites. They have the overall better roster compared to Tennessee, which is really the only team you're comparing them to in that division. And now they have the better quarterback to go along with it. I think that Matt Ryan is a better quarterback than Ryan Tannehill. So as far as the division goes, I think that they're in a really good spot to win the division. Now, as far as overall, I also said that, whenever we were listing the potential quarterbacks for the Colts and the guys that were available, I essentially said that I thought Matt Ryan and Jimmy Garoppolo were the two best options because I felt that the Colts would still need to address quarterback eventually, and that they would be the two best guys to mentor your new quarterback. And that I didn't really think either one of these guys were like the franchise answer, only because of where Matt Ryan is in his career. I do think he still has probably about like 3 good years of football left. So it's not something where I think the Colts need to reach on a quarterback in this upcoming draft class or anything like that. That's where it's different, where if you would ended up with Jimmy G or Baker Mayfield or something like that, I might have, been wanting the Colts to try to grab another quarterback, where I don't think you have to do that now for at least a couple of years. But the AFC is just so loaded that it's tough for me. So I think they should be AFC South favorites, but I still, the Chiefs and the Bills, I definitely still like more. And then you've got the Bengals, the Chargers, the Broncos, and then potentially the Browns with this Deshaun Watson trade and Amari Cooper trade, to where that's how many teams I just list off? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams. That's 6 teams. Yeah, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, Chargers, Broncos, and Browns. I don't think that those teams are all definitely better than the Colts. Isn't what I'm saying, but I think the Chiefs and the Bills are probably my 2 favorite teams in the AFC. And then I think the Colts fall in there somewhere with the rest of those teams, the Bengals, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Browns.
And if you really think about it too, I mean, all you have to do is win your division and you're in. And then, as stacked as the AFC West is, and as stacked as, the AFC North is now, outside of, Pittsburgh and all that, all those teams aren't going to make the postseason.
Right.
So I mean, you're still going to have, the AFC East, and, they'll have theirs, and then of course the AFC South. So all those teams aren't going to win the, make the playoffs. Now with the wild card, there's 3 wild card spots. You would imagine that a few of those teams would be in there. But is this something where you could see, once you get into the playoffs, nobody really thought Cincinnati this last year. I mean, at every turn, Cincinnati was being doubted, up until
every single other than maybe Vegas. There were some people taking them to beat Vegas in the first round, but once they got past Vegas, it was basically all the Bengals are going to lose this round, and then they're going to lose this round.
Bengals going to lose this round.
So I could definitely see something like that. I mean, the Colts have the roster to do that. It all, a lot's going to change between March 21st, 2022, whenever we're reading this, and January of, like December 2022, January 2023, we'll have a lot better of an idea. But, whenever it comes down to matchups and things like that, once we actually get into the playoffs, but at the end of the day, you just have to get in to give yourself a chance, and then anything can happen. And this team is set up to do that. And what I like about Matt Ryan is, so he might not necessarily go out there and win you a game, but he's not going to lose you a game. Like he's not going to, 360 spin, flip the ball over the shoulder, interception to lose you the game type of thing. Like this roster is built to win, and he is a quarterback. I feel like he is the perfect type of quarterback for this team, to where, like, if y'all had Matt Ryan last year, y'all win the division last year too. I firmly believe that. And you, at the minimum, you make the playoffs. Like, y'all don't lose to the Raiders and the Jaguars at the end of the year last year if you have Matt Ryan. And it wasn't all on Carson Wentz by any means, but still, I do believe Matt Ryan makes that kind of difference. And at the end of the day, that like this roster is just too good to only be looking at the future and trying to draft a rookie and hoping that, because by the time that rookie, gets a couple years developed, now all these pieces that you have right now that you're ready to win with,
They're
they're
approaching 30.
yeah, they're either, you're either having to pay all of them to stick around, or some of them are just going to eventually have to move because you don't have the cap space to sign everybody, and guys are getting older and stuff like that. And so it's just, I mean, especially in the AFC as loaded as it is, you have to shoot your shot, and Matt Ryan was the best option for this team. I am also in the camp that I do not believe that Mother Nature has hit Matt Ryan yet, and I'll never say Father Time again. I'm going to say Mother Nature from now on. And people that just happen to listen to a show for the first
this
time,
show, they're probably like, "What the hell are
yeah,
you talking about?"
yeah. But like from now on, I just will not say Father Time anymore. So whenever my dumbass said Mother Nature in place of Father Time on a previous show, I will forever be referring to Father Time as Mother Nature. So I don't think that Mother Nature has approached Matt Ryan yet. I still think he has a few years of good football left. But the Colts still need to surround him with a couple more playmakers, I believe. I love Michael Pittman. I think Mo Alley Cox is a solid tight end. But
the resurrection of Nyheim Hines is upon us too.
Yeah, absolutely. The running backs are definitely going to be involved. But I do think that you guys need somebody opposite of Michael Pittman. And I still think you should bring somebody else that can bring that speed element. Now, obviously, you hope that's Paris Campbell, but you just can't plan on that being Paris Campbell. So I think you need to have another option that can bring that extra layer of speed to the offense in case Paris
like
Campbell
Calvin Austin III.
Yeah, exactly. So, maybe, get a little Julio Jones on the other side on a little 1-year prove-it deal, a little reunion. Let him play opposite Michael Pittman and then go grab Calvin Austin in the 3rd round. Like you do something like that, and then I'm really feeling good about the Colts possibly, making a run in the playoffs and not being like a one and done. Yeah, and then go grab a little honey badger out of free agency, or
there's been a little text I've gotten.
Little Stephon Gilmore to fill in for Rock Ya-Sin. I mean, there's still some. The Colts do still have some cap space to play with, even with this trade. And
so they'll have to do some restructures because I believe after the trade they've got $16.1 million left. You need right around $6 million for the draft picks, so that leaves them with about $10 million to work with. But with restructure, I believe they can restructure 5 guys like DeForest Buckner, Darius Leonard, some of the deals like that, Ryan Kelly. And I believe just 5 guys they can restructure, they'll gain over $40 million in cap space.
Yeah, the cap is just purely a myth. It does not exist.
As we've seen from the Rams.
Right. So, but at the end of the day, the Colts have a really solid roster, and then they just went from Carson Wentz to a borderline top 10 quarterback and a definite top 15 quarterback in the National Football League, which is more than good enough to win the AFC South and to make some noise in the AFC playoffs, depending on, how the games bounce and things like that. It would not shock me a bit to see the Colts make a run now with Matt Ryan under center. I think that it was a great move. And as soon as his name came up, to me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, you heard it live whenever you brought it up on the show. I said Matt Ryan, whenever we listed the options in order, who was the best fit, I told you Matt Ryan's number 1 for me. As soon as you said that Matt Ryan was available, I said, you guys go get him. You should be AFC South favorites. That was 5-6 days ago. Nothing has changed now that it's actually happened. I still feel the same way. I think that the Colts did exactly what they should have.
Yeah. And this is almost like you said, this is the opposite of Carson Wentz, where now I think, it got to the point especially the last 8 weeks of the season where Jonathan Taylor, was on an MVP tear, but the guy was facing 8, 9, sometimes even 10 men in the box. And this alleviates that issue. You cannot put 8 men in the box against Matt Ryan, especially if you get a guy like a Julio or a Calvin Austin or someone like that, Sky Moore.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
even if if people are scared of Julio with the injuries, I mean, granted, OBJ is coming off an injury too, but OBJ is still out there as well. And then there's still there's still
well,
other
MVS is still
secondary,
out
yeah,
there. I
there's still
mean,
secondary wide
there's
receiver
Jarvis
options.
Landry still out there.
Yeah, there is still players that proven players that can make plays out there in free agency, as well as a very, very deep wide receiver draft
Yeah.
class.
And I
So
think it's almost kind of a written, I think for me that 42 now is going to be a wide receiver for the Colts. Looking at guys like Alec Pierce, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Sky Moore, you're just spitballing, Christian Watson would be, one of my favorites to go at that point. If he doesn't go earlier than that, honestly. But
yeah, he's
I
been getting
mean,
some buzz. He might get up above that, but who knows?
yeah. So I mean, you never know with the NFL draft. It's such a deep class at wide receiver, and there's so many good ones. Um, a guy too, like I'm really hoping falls, and I don't see falling that far, but with the ACL injury, is a guy like maybe Jamison Williams if he falls, you know, into
Yeah,
the second round. I mean,
I would be shocked, but who knows though? Crazy things happen in the
right?
NFL draft
Yeah.
every
I
year.
mean,
So
yeah. T. Higgins fell into the second. Michael Pittman fell into the second. I mean,
yeah,
you never know. So
that's true.
so yeah, so like I was saying, for me, it's almost like it's the perfect marriage of the player, the leader he is, which is
Hmm.
also a thing I know they were really high on, especially after this last year. He's going to be a consummate professional, and the fit of the offense, like what he can give you in the offense that Frank Reich wants to run. You're talking about quick rhythm throws, getting the ball out quickly, diagnosing pre-snap, post-snap,
He's perfect for the Colts,
yeah,
man. He really
accurate.
is.
I mean, yeah, it's literally a perfect marriage, very similar to how Matt Stafford fit last year with Sean McVay's offense. It's almost the same thing. And a stat that does tie them together, which if you didn't know, they are actually really good friends, him and Stafford are. But since 2008, since they entered the league, or not 2008, I believe. Yeah, so since his debut, Matt Ryan has 42 game-winning drives, tied with Matthew Stafford for the most in the NFL since he entered the league. So this is also a guy
I didn't know
that,
that. I mean,
yeah,
I didn't realize he had that many game winning drives. That's impressive.
yeah. So that's even better because as we saw last year, the Colts, especially, the Tennessee game, the Baltimore game, the Tampa Bay game, obviously, the Raiders and, some of these other games, they folded in the fourth quarter when all the
Yeah,
chips were on the line. They folded. And a lot of
that's
that,
true.
and I don't mean to pile on Carson Wentz because I really do. I really, really like the guy. And I hope he has success in Washington. I really do. But a lot of that was due to the quarterback. The quarterback folded in the biggest moments, you know, outside of Arizona, whenever he had to make a play, he didn't make a play. And
Right.
it's almost like I said, it's the opposite with Matt Ryan, where if he has to make a play to win a game, and you can put the Super Bowl on him, the 28-3 Super
That's not on
Bowl.
him. That's on
That's
Shanahan.
not on exactly. Well, not only that, the defense gave up 31 second half. I mean, 30 plus second half points. I mean,
Yeah, and I still think that's partly on Shanahan too for for
for
putting them out there on the field so
gosh,
much.
man. Yeah, that's just
Um,
so
but
I mean,
one
yeah,
thing I
you
could
can point
definitely
to
not
that
say is
one
that's
big
not
one.
on Matt Ryan.
No, and you can point to that one big one, but more often than not, to win a game, he's going to deliver in the biggest moments. So I think that's another thing that the Colts were really missing last year. And it's actually
Yeah.
something that Frank Reich pointed out today whenever they asked him. So Frank Reich and Chris Ballard both made comments after the deal was done later, this afternoon. And that was one of the things Frank Reich pointed out was, he's a guy that in the fourth quarter, he's going to give you a chance every single game to win in the fourth quarter. He's never going to fold. Um, so yeah, it's the perfect marriage of player, scheme, leadership, franchise. I mean, talent, roster. I mean, it's a perfect marriage. So,
Yeah. I mean, to echo
uh,
your statements before we move on, like so I'm a big Kyle Pitts fan. I'm a Kyle Pitts dynasty owner. So um, last year I watched more Falcons games than I cared to admit because the Rams typically play in the 3 o'clock window and the Falcons would play in the noon window. So I would watch a lot of Falcons games, as painful as that was. And definitely, I mean, I haven't went back and watched film of the games since the end of the season, but just watching the games, Matt Ryan never really looked like the problem to me. So I agree with what you were saying in terms of him, like him falling off or he being washed or anything like that. I don't believe any of that noise either. I think that Matt Ryan is still ready to play very high level football.
Yeah. And if you are a Colts fan or really any fan and you're curious about the Matt Ryan thing, if you're not really adept at watching film, you don't really know what to look for, or if you just don't have the time to do it, even though you do enjoy it, um, there is a guy, Chris Shepard on Twitter. It's at NFL Scheme, did a full, uh, pretty detailed, but really good breakdown of Matt Ryan with plays. And, he goes through basically an entire film breakdown of, you know, him as a quarterback, and this was all from last season on what he saw, and he did a really great job. So go ahead and give him a follow on Twitter, and then check that out if you are interested in more of a film, scouting style breakdown of Matt Ryan last year. And like I said, I've done my own film, but I also looked at him because I just like having all kinds of resources, and it's the film doesn't paint the picture of a quarterback that's declining. If anything, like I said, he rose the ceiling of that team, because there's no way that should have been a 7-win team.
Right.
Yeah, the fact that the Colts won 2 games more than that team did, with 7 Pro
With the most
Bowlers
Pro
and
Bowlers in the league.
Jonathan Taylor doing what he did. It's just, I mean, wow. So yeah, I'm really excited, but there are more moves that happened, namely another guy here that is in our title, and that is Bill Cosby. I'm sorry, Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry. Got that mixed up real quick. So Deshaun Watson is a Cleveland Brown. He ended up choosing the Browns over Atlanta. And I believe the finalists, it was between Atlanta and New Orleans that was reported. The Cleveland Browns kind of swooped in,
gave him 230 million reasons why they should chose Cleveland.
Yeah, because they swept him off his feet with a huge guaranteed deal, the most guaranteed money in NFL history, $230 million, which is just insane. And obviously now there's a whole thing with Baker, but if the Deshaun Watson thing doesn't happen, if he doesn't reach because Atlanta wasn't they didn't enter the race. Deshaun Watson was the one that contacted Atlanta. So if you didn't know that, now you do. The Atlanta Falcons never reached out to him. He reached out to them. And so without Deshaun Watson reaching out to them, the Colts might not have Matt Ryan right now. So there was a huge ripple effect from this throughout the league. Obviously, the Baker Mayfield thing, Jameis is now going back to the Saints. Matt Ryan is now traded, and a lot of this has to do because of Deshaun Watson. And so what are your views, from a personal, I mean, I know, like, as a father, you're a husband, you're a father, you have a little girl, and like me, like, I've got my fiance, and I've got a sister. And so I mean, I know my personal views, but I am kind of curious to see, like, what's your personal views to see how this has played out for a guy that has all of these off the field a lot of them, 22 women, the sexual assault charges, or they didn't get charged criminally, but they still are civil cases. I mean, they're still out there. And this process of him basically holding every team hostage throughout this whole thing, nothing was done until he made his decision. And not only that, but now getting rewarded that $230 million, which only base salary contract this year is only $1 million. So he could, if in case he is suspended, which is all likelihood,
the suspension money comes out of that base salary,
which base salary. And so they structured it to where it's only 1 million because
it's Deshaun Watson's agent laughing at the NFL because they know what's coming, and it's not going to cost Watson anything.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like, I'm sure I know your professional views on it, because you are able, like, we are able to differentiate the player from the person and what we think it is on the field. But I am kind of curious about your personal views on the scenario and how this has kind of been handled.
So it's gross, and it's not surprising, and it's gross that it's not surprising. If you can make sense of that.
Absolutely.
That's kind of how I felt about it. I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what he's guilty, not guilty of. I know that 22 cases is pretty tough to fake. Maybe some of those are thrown in there, to try to get some extra money. Somebody's trying to get rich. I don't know. But if you have 22 cases against you, I'm assuming along the way you probably did something wrong. And sexual assault is gross. It just is. It's wrong. It's disgusting. And it's unfortunate. that all of this is playing out the way it is. But it's not surprising, because as soon as he was cleared, for initially, I knew this.
criminally.
I knew that this was how it was going to play out, and and that's sad. But I knew as soon as that happened, I was like, okay, here comes the Deshaun Watson floodgates for the trades and things like that. And so it's, it sucks, man, because I mean, if my daughter was one of those people, if my wife was one of those people, and then I saw this man get handed $230 million guaranteed after he just got done sexually assaulting my wife or my daughter, that's sickening to think about. And there's no way for me to know what he did, what he didn't do. I have no idea. I'm not a law expert, and I'm not God. I'm not, I don't know what happened. But it sucks that I'm not surprised by how this played out. Like, this shouldn't be like, oh, that's exactly how I expected this to play out. Like, this should be a surprise. It should be something that is more alarming than it is. But it's just another day in the NFL where, as long as you are good at whatever your position is in the NFL, whatever it calls for, as long as you're good enough at that, it does not matter what else you've done. As long as you are still good on that football field and you can make a football team money or win them games, you always have a job. And so that kind of sucks. So that's personal wise, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I know it's uncomfortable to talk about, but I think it's a necessary conversation to have.
Yeah.
It's, and like you said, we're not judges, we're not juries, we're not privy to everything, but just from the outside looking in, the optics of it, it is like it doesn't look good. And if I'm a Cleveland Browns fan, and I've got a daughter or a wife, or I am a female fan, it'd be hard for me to root for the franchise. I think you're going to see a lot of exodus from that franchise. There's been a lot of backlash already. And
saying they did extensive research, and then the lawyer that represents the 22 women said they didn't even reach out to us. So they did extensive research on the one side of the story they wanted to hear, and that was
it's
it.
Really, I'm actually for one shocked that you asked Deshaun Watson what happened and you didn't find anything wrong.
Pretty shocking there.
Yeah, completely shocked. So regardless of the personal views, now we can get into the professional views and how this fits in the world of football for the Cleveland Browns, and where this places them in, once again, that very loaded AFC. So just looking at it strictly from a football on-field perspective, they gave up a ton of picks to get him, but whenever you have a quarterback that's that talented, borderline top 5 guy, if not top 5 guy outright,
I think he safely is, honestly.
Yeah. And I mean, is there really a price that's too big to pay for a guy like that? I don't personally think so.
Especially not at the age that he's at.
Exactly. So how do you think this works on the field for Cleveland, and where do you think this vaults them in the conference?
So I mean, looking back to whenever we saw him in 2020, he had the 3rd highest PFF grade in 2020. And the Texans were 4-12 that year. It was a terrible team, but he was an incredible quarterback. Just to give you an idea how incredible of a year he had, he completed over 70% of his passes and averaged over 8.5 yards per attempt. Now, if you're averaging over 8.5 yards per attempt, you're typically not completing that high percentage of passes, because that's a pretty, high average yards per attempt to be throwing. And this was the season after DeAndre Hopkins was traded to the Cardinals as well. Like, one of the best receivers in the NFL isn't on that field while he's putting these numbers up. There's only been 4 other guys that have done that in a season. Joe Burrow last year went to the Super Bowl. Drew Brees in 2009 went to the Super Bowl. Steve Young in 94 went to the Super Bowl. Joe Montana in 89 went to the Super Bowl. The Texans were 4-12. The dude completed over 70% of his passes at over 8.5 yards an attempt. The Texans went 4-12. This is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the NFL, going to in my opinion, a top 10 overall roster in the NFL. Now, They did trade for Amari Cooper as well, which is he's an incredible receiver, a very talented receiver. I do still think they could use some additions there. I don't think Donovan Peoples-Jones is bad, but I do still think they could use some more wide receiver depth. They're trying to bring Jarvis Landry back reportedly. They still, they don't have their first round pick, obviously, but they, still have other picks where they could add some wide receiver depth. But I do think they need to add to the wide receiver position to help out Amari Cooper. I do like now they cut bait with Austin Hooper at the tight end position. But I still feel like David Njoku and Harrison Bryant is a very competent tight end room. They like Harrison Bryant quite a bit. I believe he won the college award for best tight end his last year in college before he got drafted, but he was so overshadowed. That was the year he got drafted was the year they brought in Austin Hooper on that big deal after his, big season in Atlanta. So that was kind of overshadowed. He's been buried behind Austin Hooper and Njoku, but no Austin Hooper now. So it's just Njoku and Harrison Bryant on a team that likes to run two tight end sets. So I think both of them will see the field plenty. They still have one of the best offensive lines in football. Now we'll see what, cutting JC Treader does to that offensive line. It's one of the, better centers in football that's still out there on the market. And then they've still got one of the best running back, if not probably, I'd say the best running back duo in terms of talent in the NFL with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And that part of why I wasn't shocked that they grabbed Deshaun Watson is they also roster Kareem Hunt. So, if you understand the background with Kareem Hunt, you understand what that comes from. But I mean, in terms of what this does from the Browns on the football field, just football implications, they are right there in Super Bowl contention. I mean, I don't know. Oh, excuse me. I don't know what his suspension is going to look like, and if it'll be enough games to where maybe they don't make the playoffs this year. I have no idea. Maybe he gets suspended for the entire season. Maybe he gets suspended for half a season, 6 games, 4 games. I have no clue. So we'll have a better idea once that comes out, because Roger Goodell hasn't exactly been consistent with his, suspensions, and you don't need to be indicted by legal aspects to be suspended by Goodell either. Like I would still fully expect Deshaun Watson to get suspended, and assuming the fact that they layered this contract where he has a $1 million base salary this season, which is where his suspension would come from. I think it's pretty safe to say Watson and his lawyer also assume that a suspension is coming, but how much that will hurt the Browns' chances this year will depend on how many games he misses. So we'll see, once that eventually comes out. But I mean, with how talented he is, how good this roster is, and the fact that I don't think they're necessarily done adding to the roster, they're just as much of a threat as anybody to me to contend for the Super Bowl as early as next season. He's that good.
Yeah, and they also they signed Jacoby Brissett as the backup. So
right,
you have to think that if he does miss time, that will be their quarterback, in the meantime until he is able to return. But yeah, I agree. The on-field stuff. I mean, the guy's dynamic in every way. Run, pass, whatever you need him to do, he's borderline elite at almost everything. Yeah. So to add that type of quarterback to a team that the last time we saw Baker Mayfield healthy, they won 10 games, won a playoff game against the Steelers. Obviously, Baker Mayfield wasn't healthy last year, so it's kind of a weird measurement because it's hard to overcome whenever your quarterback's hurt, Nick Chubb's hurt, Kareem Hunt's out. There's Odell, that stuff went down with Odell. So it was a challenging season for Cleveland, and now we'll get a chance to prove the myth if it really is just Cleveland. If the stink is just
Deshaun Watson goes in there and all of a sudden sucks at quarterback. Cleveland is just cursed.
Yeah, you're just done. So yeah, I believe for me, like I said, I know last year we loved the roster they put together. We loved the draft that they had. And getting other guys. I mean, I think JOK was also hurt, last year as well.
Yeah.
So
and played great in the games that he did play.
Exactly. So getting a guy like that back, we'll see if they re-sign, some pass rushers, Jadeveon Clowney and, some guys like that. We'll see how that plays out, but their secondary still looks good. Amari Cooper trade went through. They lost Austin Hooper, but they got David Njoku back. So I don't really think that's much of a loss, honestly, because I mean, not really that big of a deal, which of course Austin Hooper did sign with the Titans. So, congratulations on that, whatever you think of that. I'm not gonna
much more cap friendly deal than the one that the Browns signed him to, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt still back there. The offensive line is one of the best offensive lines in football. Um, it's just on the field. On the field, I think this was by far the best choice for him.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I agree.
compared to the other
Between the
ones.
Saints, the Falcons, the Panthers, the Browns clearly had the best roster top to bottom. And I don't really think it's particularly close.
Right.
So yeah, the football wise, this absolutely always made the most sense, which was why it was so weird that this was like the first team that was initially ruled out, until they gave him 230 million reasons to reconsider. Yeah, this always made the most sense to me, just strictly on the
Yeah.
football field.
Yeah, I mean, but this, like I said, this basically just shows you, like I said, that winning is above all.
Yeah,
There's no issue that's too big for winning, and they've alienated a lot of their fan base because of it. So it'll be curious to see how this plays out. And maybe it is just the vocal minority fans on Twitter, maybe not. You might be talking about only 5 to 10% of Cleveland fans or who are very vocal are the ones that are making the most noise, and then the other 90% really don't give a shit. So I
that
mean,
probably is the case.
yeah.
I feel bad. I feel bad for the female fans, honestly. Outside of that, it's like, most of the people will probably, most of the Cleveland Browns fans, especially once he goes out there and he starts playing well and he starts winning them games, they'll get over it. But the young female fans that want to be football fans, despite the fact that they are, that they are young women or, older women, whatever the case may be, that's the group that I feel bad for. Cause I mean, how do you not feel like the Browns are just giving you the middle finger?
Yeah, like your voice doesn't matter, your
Yeah.
opinion doesn't
Like,
matter.
how do you not feel that way?
Yeah, it's tough, man. It's a tough situation. But there are other moves that happen as well. There are more blockbuster deals in
Even
a week.
more.
Yeah, in a week full of them. So we did talk about the Amari Cooper trade, but there's also another wide receiver traded, a pretty big wide receiver traded, and that is Davante Adams leaving Green Bay, going to the Las Vegas Raiders to join his best friend Derek Carr on a deal averaging $28 million per year. You're looking at quarterback money going to the wide receiver position,
Oh man.
which
And they
granted,
gave up first and a second round pick to be able to pay him that.
yeah.
Like,
So I
not
mean,
only did they pay him that, they gave up draft capital to be able to do it.
yeah. So I mean, look, if you are looking to pay a wide receiver that kind of money and that kind of draft capital, you picked a good one to do it to, because I think he's the best wide receiver in football. Now we'll see how this impacts, him not having Aaron Rodgers and going from Aaron Rodgers to Derek Carr. I'm still firmly on the camp that Derek Carr is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in football.
I agree.
I think he's really, really good. So we'll see how this plays out, for Las Vegas. But the whole AFC West is making moves, and everybody just kind of sat back and said, like, well, the Raiders are screwed. Well, then they go out, sign Chandler Jones. They make
Right.
the deal for Rocky Ya-Sin. They get,
Right.
they ship Ngakwe off.
They upgraded their secondary, they upgraded their pass rush, and now they upgraded their receivers as well.
Yeah. So the offensive line is still some question marks there, for
Yeah.
sure. But outside of that, it's a
They
really
still,
strong
I
roster.
do still think they have question marks in their secondary as well, even with Rock Ya-Sin. Like, they are losing Casey Hayward in free agency, and even with Casey Hayward, they still have some question marks as well. So I do still think there
Yeah.
are some other questions on the
Nate
defense.
Hobbs did some good work as a rookie though. So
Yeah.
they're in the slot for them. So we'll see, how that plays out for them. But so Davante Adams no longer in Green Bay. Apparently Aaron Rodgers knew that was where it was headed
Yeah. That
before
was
he
almost
signed
as
his
surprising as
contract.
anything.
Exactly. So how do you think this works? What are your optics when you're looking at it from the Packers standpoint and the Raiders standpoint now?
So let me preface this by saying that I love Davante Adams as a talent,
Ooh.
and he is at this moment, he is at worst a top 3 receiver. Like, that's as low as I'm willing to go. It's like, I could maybe have an argument that he's the 3rd best receiver in the league, and that's as low as I'm willing to go. He's 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. I love Davante Adams. I think he's an incredible talent, and I think on top of everything, it's incredible to see whenever he came into the league his first couple of years, he stunk. Let's just call it what it is. And
He struggled, man.
the dude worked on his craft and turned into one of the best overall receivers in the league. But he's also 29 years old, which is where you start to see production dip typically for wide receivers. And the Raiders gave up a first and a second round pick for the rights to be able to pay Davante Adams $140 million over the next 5 years. Now, there is a potential out in the contract after the 2024 season that'll come with $8 million in dead cap, at which point he'll be like 33 years old. And it's not young for a wide receiver. And so it's just tough for me to really like this for the Raiders. Whenever I can respect and appreciate the fact that the Raiders did not just lay down, despite the fact that most would assume that most would feel that the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos are all better rosters and all better teams. And I think most people outside of Raiders fans would probably pick the Raiders to finish last in this division. So you can respect and appreciate the fact that they didn't just say everybody else is right, we're just going to lay it down. They're still going for it. They're still making moves. And so you can appreciate that. But I am in that camp that I think even with Davante Adams on this team, I still think that they are the worst team in the AFC West. And I think that they're going to miss out on the playoffs. As of today, I would not pick them to make the playoffs because not every team in this division can make the playoffs. I guess they could. I guess they could, the division winner, and then maybe they get all three of the wild card slots. But with each of these teams having to play 2 games a year against everybody in the team, like this division is going to beat up on each other. So
luckily for them too, they also get the AFC South.
Right. Yeah. So they get a guaranteed game against the Texans and against the Jaguars. So I guess that's good.
Titans,
right. So. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. That I don't know how good that is, but so
play Ryan Tannehill.
It's like this deal for Adams, this contract for Adams would have made more sense for me if the and there are reports that the Packers tried to match it, but at that point Adams was just like the bridges were burned. They had more than enough chances to pay Adams and they chose not to. And apparently he's like been a lifelong Raiders fan. It's been a dream to play for the Raiders, so he got to play for the team he's wanted to play for. So good for you.
With his
Davante.
Best friend too. Like
yeah,
Derek Carr and him.
College quarterback, roommates, like. Good for you, Davante. You've put in the work. You've gotten so much better over the years, and now you get what you want. You're the highest paid player at your position, playing where you want to play at, who you want to play with. Good for you. That is, we're players first over here in terms of like, go get your bag, get what you want, make the most out of your career. Good for you.
We're never going to stick up for the teams. I'll tell you that right now.
No.
We'll never stick up for the owners.
Go get the bag. But I just feel like the Packers are in a more win now window than the Raiders are, to where if the Packers hand Adams this deal, it's like, well, that's probably too much money for a guy that's 29 years old on a 5-year deal. But I understand you have Aaron Rodgers for this set amount of time. You want to try to maximize what you can. That Rodgers and Adams connection has been unworldly. So, pay him whatever you got to pay him to keep him in the building and see what you can make out of it. Because the NFC, is obviously is not as deep as the AFC. So that's what I was going to
say. The Packers are contenders just from the simple fact that they don't play in the AFC.
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly.
There's already a better shot right there.
And so if that would have happened, that would have made more sense to me. Even though I still would have felt like that's too much money for Adams at his age, at the position he plays. It would have made more sense than with the Raiders doing it. Again, I can appreciate the Raiders are going for it and they're not just laying down, but I just felt like the Raiders and the Packers are two teams that are not at the exact same spot in my mind from a contention standpoint. And so that was the eyebrow raise for me, where like at the end of the day, you want to put elite players on the field regardless of how you got to do it. And the Raiders did that by getting Adams on the field. But they've got Davante Adams, and I still feel like they're the worst team in that division. And maybe I'm wrong for that, but that's how I feel though.
Yeah, because we felt the same way about Cincinnati last year.
Exactly.
And so I know we keep going back to the Cincinnati well, but that's just that's football.
They're the blueprint that gives everybody hope.
Yeah. So Jacksonville could waste all their money, and they could do the Jacksonville thing, or
they're another team. You see how big of a shit show Urban Meyer is with all these reports coming out and everything. Like, who knows? Jacksonville.
very
come out
easily
and
could
win
make
10
noise.
games next year or some shit. Like, who
Yeah, I
knows,
mean,
man?
you never know. That's the
You don't.
NFL.
You
So,
really don't.
um,
But
that's why you have to
I
maximize your chances.
yeah, but I spent a lot of time talking about it, so I'm curious to hear what you think about Davante to the Raiders, and you know where the Packers go from here too.
Yeah, I do agree that I still think the Raiders are kind of at the tail end of that division. But I think as far as in terms of where they are in the conference, it's a little bit better. I think
Mhm.
they are better than some teams in the AFC East. I think they're better than
Yeah.
some teams in the AFC South. I think they're better than Pittsburgh. It just sucks that they play in the division they play in because
Hmm.
that's the easiest way to make the playoffs is to win your division. And I think it's almost kind of a foregone conclusion by most fans. Like I said, we'll see what happens when the season starts. But right now, looking at it, it's almost a foregone conclusion that they're probably on the outside looking in and hoping to get a wild card spot.
Right.
So yeah, does this move put you over the top? I don't necessarily know that, outside of trading for a quarterback like, Deshaun Watson or Justin Herbert, Mahomes, unless you can get a quarterback like that, I never know if it puts you over the top. Um, in terms of that. And as much as I love Derek Carr, he's not one of those guys. I mean, very, very good, very, very, very good quarterback, top 10 quarterback, to me. But I don't. Well, I mean, I think Derek Carr can get streaky. So on a good streak, I think he's top 10. On a bad streak, I think
He's definitely top 15.
yeah, I say on the back end of that, you're probably looking at 15. You're almost kind of looking at him and Matt Ryan
Yeah,
in
hey,
similar
the Matt
terms.
Ryan, Kirk Cousins territory type of thing.
Yeah. Um, which I honestly I don't put Kirk Cousins in there. I think Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, but it's on, when the game's on the line, Kirk Cousins is going to fold. And I don't think those two guys do. I think when the game's on the line, those two guys play their best football. Um, but that's an argument for another time.
Yeah,
So I mean,
which I
yeah,
don't think that's much of an argument. I agree.
right. So I
Like,
mean, well, I just saw you shake your head, so I was just like, well, I don't know if he really agrees
no,
with
no,
that
no,
or
no,
not.
no. I would
Okay.
that was kind of like a
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. But yeah, man. So you think about it from that perspective. Um, does this move make them favorites in their division? No. Does it make them Super Bowl favorites? No. But does it make them more competitive? Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it's all about. So yeah, all you can do is give yourself the best shot. And anytime you have a wide receiver like Davante Adams available, um, I mean, it's hard to tell yourself that you don't need to make that move.
Right.
So I completely agree with what the Raiders did. I'm all on board for it. I think I think you're going to see more benefits, maybe possibly from a. I don't think you're going to see the benefit, like not from like a fantasy perspective, but because anybody leaving Aaron Rodgers, especially whenever you're the only guy there, whenever you get that many targets,
Hmm.
um, and you're going to a different offense, a different scheme. We'll see how Josh McDaniels does. Um, that's another question mark there, but it's I mean, it's a good move for what the Raiders, and I understand why they did
Yeah,
it.
you look at that offense as a whole, man. Like Carr is no slouch, and then you got Josh Jacobs and Kenyon Drake at running back. You've got Davante Adams, Hunter Renfro. You've got Darren Waller. Like that
Brian
is,
Edwards is still there. I mean,
yeah. Hopefully he does something because I
I'm just
was
saying,
high
like,
on
I mean,
him coming out of
if Brian
college.
Edwards is your fourth or fifth option, that's not a bad thing.
No,
I mean,
but
that's
like that offense is not going to be an easy one to defend by any means.
no, and they can be very multiple. It's going to depend on how the coaches use them, and like you said, there are some questions still on defense there.
Going back to your first point, it just sucks they play in the AFC West.
Yeah,
That because
it
like
does, man.
we're talking about them like yeah they're going to finish last in their division, but at the same time we're not saying they're a bad team.
Exactly. I mean, you're probably looking at probably a top 6 to 7 team in the conference.
Yeah,
The thing that sucks is like, 3 of the 6 teams that are better than you are 3 teams in your division.
right. Yeah,
So,
and
and,
they've got to play 6 games against the Chiefs, the Chargers, and the Broncos. Like
yeah, and then now they play the Colts now with Matt Ryan, and we'll see what the Colts do. Like I said, there's been rumblings about Tyrann Mathieu, maybe Dwayne Brown, maybe Julio Jones. I mean, so they could improve. The Titans were the #1 overall seed in the whole conference last year. Derrick Henry should be healthy this year.
and they
Hopefully.
got better this week too. The
Yeah.
Titans got
So
better this week. We hadn't talked about that yet, but they got better this week too.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll get to it. I mean, we don't know if they did or not. There's a lot of questions around that move, regardless of how much we love the player. You know, you
Oh
got
no, they
take
got better.
take the homerism out of it. But
I don't need to. They got better.
we'll see. But yeah, it's you know, it just sucks that they played that division. That's all we'll say
Yeah,
about
that's
it.
brutal,
So
man.
now to allude to the move you are talking about, we'll just go ahead and jump right into that one. Robert Woods now on the move from the Los Angeles Rams, one of your favorite players, one of my favorite players, to the Tennessee Titans for a 6th-round pick. They now inherit his salary, 15 million this year, 15 million next year, 17 million the year after that. He is 30 years old, coming off of an ACL tear, which isn't as big of a deal as it used to be. So,
No, it's just
and
a
he's got, and
normal
he's,
thing now.
yeah, so I mean, he's got the work ethic that I think he'll be fine, but they are very tight for money. And then now they, like I said, a 30-year-old receiver with an injury, you're paying that kind of money to. That's my only question about it. Very similar to how the Julio Jones thing, was last year for me. Like, did I think Julio's a bad player? No. Was he hurt? And did you give up a 2nd-round pick and you got to pay him that money? Yes. That's why I didn't think it was a good move. The good news for them is they only gave up a 6th-round pick this time. So if
Mhm.
it doesn't work out, you're not losing out, on the deal. And I do think he's got a little less injury history than Julio does, especially at this point in his career.
Yeah, this was more of an
Um,
outlier than like a normal
yeah,
thing for
exactly.
him.
So, but yeah, Robert Woods, one of the best run blocking receivers. That's something they really preach down there in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. And then, he gets to play with AJ Brown as well now. So I mean, that's a stud receiver. He can come in, be a wide receiver too there, do what he's done almost his whole career, and that's just consistently produce good seasons. And it is a quarterback downgrade, but as he's
Yeah.
shown, um, he was able to have success with Jared Goff. So, I mean, and I think Ryan Tannehill is better than Jared Goff. I
He
don't think
he
anybody's
is.
arguing that.
Yeah.
So he's shown that even though the quarterback play is a downgrade, he can still be productive with not great quarterback play. Now I'll be curious to see, because we know how much they do run the ball. They really want to only throw the ball 25 to 30 times a game. I'll be curious to see how he impacts it from that perspective. But he's a guy that's going to go over the middle of the field. He's going to get open in zone coverages. Very, very smart guy,
Mhm.
and an absolute stud leader in the locker room. As if they needed any more leadership there in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel. Now they get a guy like that to come in that locker room as well. So yeah, I mean, I do think this is a really good move for the Titans. It's worth the risk, honestly, because you're not giving up a really high value asset. There is a lot of money attached to it, which we can see how that you know
That's part of
hurts
why it was
them.
only a 6th round pick.
Yeah, so we'll see how that ends up. Because like I said, they are very, very strapped for cash there in Tennessee. They keep restructuring guys and kicking the can down the road, but eventually you're going to have to pay the. I mean, it's going to bite up. It's going to bite you eventually if you keep doing that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we'll see how that works out. But in the term this year, I mean, I think it's a good move for him. It's worth the risk for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so just to give you an idea, he's over the last 5 seasons, Woods has the second best run block win rate at the wide receiver position. He has the second most run block wins, trailing only former teammate Cooper Kupp. So in terms of what they want to do with the run game, he's going to do wonders for them at that aspect. And then another really underrated part of this move, I feel like, is that Robert Woods has been sent in shift or motion 863 times since 2018. Okay, that's 140 more than the next closest player, and has the third most shift or motion carries over that time as well. And he's the only receiver that's top 25 in the NFL in that category, which a lot of is what McVay had designed, whenever they brought Woods over. But the Titans offense also had almost a 60% shift motion rate last season, which was the 6th highest in the NFL. So he
Right.
even fits what they want to do from an offensive standpoint in that aspect. And Vrabel, before the Rams and Titans played each other last year, and Vrabel spoke very, very highly about Woods and his overall game and his run blocking
Absolutely.
ability and things like that. It's stuff that if you know Robert Woods, you already can know and appreciate as it is. So it wasn't a surprise. And one thing, I am a Rams fan, so I am biased. I love Robert Woods. Robert Woods and Andrew Whitworth, who are both now off the team, were the two big free agency splashes the first year of the McVay era. Those were the first two big signings that really changed the culture in the Rams organization. So I've got a lot of love for Robert Woods, and there's not enough can be said about what he brings from a leadership and a stability standpoint. And just like, if Tannehill is ever like, fuck, where do I go with the ball? Robert Woods is always a good answer. He's somewhere. Oh, if you can just get it in his general area, he's going to catch the ball. He's
Well, usually when
dependable.
Tannehill says that, he throws it into three, defenders.
Right.
So,
It's a very real possibility. But it was such a, to me, it was, obviously as a Rams fan, it was really, it was bittersweet, because I mean, this move was necessary from a financial standpoint, because they did bring in Allen Robinson, which we'll talk about in a little while. They did, and they want to bring back Aaron Donald. They're going to make him the highest paid defensive player in the NFL. And between Matthew Stafford getting extended and Robert Woods getting traded, they saved almost 17 million in cap space. But one thing that I can appreciate, one thing I love about the Rams organization is, I mean, I don't know about the accuracy of the report, but I did see from credible sources that the Rams turned down less trade compensation. Like, they could have gotten more for Woods, but they turned it down because Woods wanted to go to Tennessee. He wanted to go to a scheme that he fit in, and to a team that he thought that he would fit in well with, and Tennessee was that team. So there were better trade offers on the table for Woods, but they turned that down to send him where he wanted to go, which is, which I can really, really appreciate. And so just one of the many reasons why I love this team, and the front office, and what they've done over the last few years. But it sucks. It really sucks to see him go, man. I mean, it's not that I don't love what the Rams have done this offseason, because I think that they've made some really good moves. But regardless of the age, regardless of the injury, it's just never easy to see a guy like Woods leave.
yeah, I agree, man. That's a big miss in the locker room, but I think they are very well prepared to handle it now. So now we will, we kind of touched onto some big ones, which, we're not going to be able to talk 20, 30 minutes on each move because there's just been so many. So we are going to give, I'm going to do a little rapid fire here for you. You can give your opinion. I'll give my opinion, just a quick opinion on the deal. And, let's start off with your team as well here. Allen Robinson going to the Rams. How you view on that?
Yeah, I mean, so, kind of piggybacking off of the Robert Woods thing, like, you can't replicate what he brings from a leadership standpoint or from a run blocking standpoint. But just in terms of an overall playmaker, I do think that Allen Robinson is a better overall playmaking wide receiver. And this is easily by far the best quarterback Allen Robinson has ever played with, getting to play next to Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
3 years, 45 million, 30 million guaranteed. I love the player. I love the contract. I love everything about it. This this is the move that makes the Woods move a little bit easier to swallow, is that the talent that is getting put into that wide receiver room next to Cooper Kupp. So I have no complaints on that aspect. I'm a huge Allen Robinson fan. I have been since the Jacksonville days. And so whenever I saw that notification come through, I was thrilled.
Yeah, I agree. He's one of my absolute favorite players. I know you've been on his side for quite a while as well. We both have. So to see him go to the Rams, finally get a quarterback in Stafford.
It's kind of funny
And
because, like, we've been backing Stafford through the bad years, backing
yeah,
Robinson through the bad years, and now here they are together, just full
exactly.
circle.
Yeah, full circle. I love it. So JC Jackson to the Chargers. Another big one.
Possibly one of, if not the best deal in free agency. It was a need. It was necessary. It was the
5
best.
years, 82.5 million.
Yeah, it was the best player at his position available. They have the rookie quarterback on the team friendly contract. They have a roster that can compete, that can win now, and they're surrounding Herbert with talent. And I love everything about it. I love what the Chargers are doing. Love, love, love.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Justin Reid to the Kansas City Chiefs, replacing Tyrann Mathieu.
So I think he's been kind of, buried out in Houston. I think a player that is underrated just because of where he's been out there. I don't think he's as versatile as the Honey Badger, but I do think he is a very good safety and a good replacement if they weren't going to re-sign the Honey Badger. So I think that was I don't have any problem with that deal for Kansas City.
Yeah, I think he's a really, really, really underrated safety. And I think they're going to be really happy with him out there. Big one that came through earlier today, Lyle Collins to the Cincinnati Bengals, along with Alex Kappa and Ted Karras. How do you like what Cincinnati's doing with their O-line?
It's amazing how they went from like maybe the weakest unit in the NFL, weakest, good Lord, the weakest unit in the NFL for like regardless of offense, defense, linebackers, corners, offensive linemen, whatever. Like the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line might have been like one of the weakest units in the NFL, regardless of team. And now they've turned around and made that almost a strength. So I don't know how you can not like what they're doing. I mean, they recognize where the problems were and they're they're throwing money at it to try to solve it.
Yeah, good for them, man. They realize what they wanted to do and they're going out and doing it. And they've got some really, really good players there. I'd still really love to see them add Zion Johnson in the first round of the draft. For that
Oh
other guard
yeah,
spot.
yeah.
Yeah,
Let him
like
play
that.
the other guard spot. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I want. I'm gonna go here with another Chiefs player now, JuJu Smith-Schuster for the Kansas City Chiefs. Making
Again,
tick
man.
making TikToks with
Yeah, him and Jackson Mahomes are going to
Jackson
come out with the
Mahomes.
content, but whenever he's on the football field, though, I think he's going to be a perfect fit for this offense. He's going to give that middle of the field, sure hands, just the reliable receiver where you've got Kelsey doing the same thing, and then you've got Tyreek making the big plays. I think that was such a great value, and I think that I think Juju's going to make himself some money after the season too. As long as assuming we're not going to assume injury, assuming he can stay healthy, I think he's going to put some really good tape together on this offense, and he's going to make himself some money next offseason.
Yeah, it's another move I really like. He's exactly what they need at that wide receiver spot. Opposite Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelsey. He fits in so well with those guys. Another former Ram, just won a Super Bowl with you guys, Von Miller heading to the Buffalo Bills.
That man got the bag, which I
Yeah,
mean, I think some of it was just kind of like the
extra years.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, the even in his 30s, the dude is an impact player, and like you saw it in the playoffs with the Rams last year. Even coming over and not having an entire season with the team, he whenever it was money time, he delivered, and I expect him to do the exact same with Buffalo. As it stands right now, the Bills would probably be my pick to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl, and Von Miller being on that team would be a huge part of that. I thought they definitely paid a lot for him, but I mean, there's no price that's too much to pay for a Super Bowl. And if they win the Super Bowl, nobody gives a shit what Von Miller's cap hit is. That's just the reality of it. So you can't, I love Von Miller, man. So whatever
Yeah.
they can get out of him.
Also added OJ Howard out there as well. So if he can stay healthy, that could be another weapon for Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I agree with Von Miller. I think anytime you can get a premier pass rusher, clearly still has juice left as well. And I think that was a position of need for them.
Mm-hmm.
With losing Jerry Hughes and some other guys, they went out and got arguably one of the best ones in the league at it. So the rich get richer. So I think that's all of like the really big moves we've touched on. Now there's still plenty of guys still out there. Teron Armstead, Tyron Matthew, like we said,
Bobby
there's
Wagner, Jadeveon
Bobby Wagner.
County, Stephon Gilmore,
Yeah,
OBJ, JC Treader, Akeem Hicks, Melvin Ingram, Calais Campbell, Gronk, Julio. Like there's still a lot of value to be had, man, and a lot of
so many
contenders
guys.
that can get better.
Yeah, so many guys still waiting to be signed and to help some teams. So we will see how that works. But I think this is a really good stopping point, considering I believe we're probably going to record again tomorrow as well, going over some other things. And then we probably get into some draft stuff later on in the week.
Yeah, we were supposed to
well,
do that like
finally.
2 weeks ago, and then
Yeah,
the NFL
exactly.
just keeps breaking news, and
Yeah,
so
it's been so hard to get caught up on everything with everybody. So we've got a week packed full of content for you guys to consume. we'll go ahead. I'll just pass it off to Andrew, and I'll kind of let him close the show today.
Yeah, so I mean, as always, if you guys are still with us, we first and foremost we appreciate the support. We appreciate you guys hanging out. If you're over at the YouTube channel already, make sure to like this video and comment down below and let us know, what you agreed on, what you disagreed on, players maybe that we didn't discuss that you think could have a big impact on the 2022 NFL season, or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, subscribe to the channel while you're over here and hit that little bell that's going to pop up whenever you subscribe so that you can be notified of the latest videos that pop up. We putting out like 1 to 2 videos a week. So you're not going to get, drowned out with notifications, but that way you will know whenever the new videos go live. And then, of course, anywhere podcasts can be found, where they're Apple, Google, Spotify, whatever the case may be, wherever you listen to your podcast, we are most likely there. So, any follows or subscriptions or whatever that platform wants you to do that we can get over there, we appreciate that as well. We're going to keep it rolling with some more NFL content. We've got more free agency to get through. As we mentioned here at the end, there's still plenty of quality players, so we're going to cover that as it breaks. And then we're going to get into the NFL draft here soon eventually. Anyway, hopefully the NFL will chill out a little bit and allow us to roll out these NFL mock drafts that
and we have the quarterback pro days this week as well.
So yeah, Kenny Pickett was today, right?
It was today.
Yeah,
he looked pretty good. So
yeah, he did.
I've been grinding a lot of college film over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah,
more than normal. So
yeah, it's an exciting time. It is. It's an exciting time. So hopefully we'll get to break some of that down for you guys here in the near future. Now that we've gotten the majority of the free agency and trades and stuff like that out of the way, there's hopefully not too much stuff that can go crazy, but I'm sure the NFL will gladly prove me wrong on that.
Don't say that.
But regardless though, if you're looking for consistent year-round NFL content with some MLB content sprinkled in there as well, we will, once we get through the meat of the NFL offseason, we will get into some baseball as well. The MLB opening day is just a few weeks away, so we'll get into some of that as well. So if you're looking for year-round NFL content, a little bit of baseball sprinkled in there as well, we're here for you guys. We're going to be doing this all year round leading into the 2022 season. And then it's only going to get deeper as the actual NFL season gets here, and it'll be here before you know it. So, like, subscribe, follow, whatever your platform wants to do. We appreciate all the support and then we really appreciate the interaction. So, comment down below, let us know your thoughts and things that we can discuss on the next show as well. So, but, first and foremost, the most important thing is we do appreciate the support and appreciate the conversation.
Yep. So thank you guys so much for listening. We will be back once again, like I said, with quite a bit of content this week, just to try to get caught up on everything that's going down. So make sure you are subscribed and aware every time we drop an episode, whether it's podcast or YouTube, you're able to consume our ridiculous content. So thank you guys so much, and we will see you this week.